Okay, so now we're going to show you how to make the stuffed cabbage. And we're going to do two kinds today. We're going to do a vegan variation and a meat variation. Okay, so here's what we're going to need. Cabbage leaves that have been boiled, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I've got more boiling, but here's where we're at so far. Plain breadcrumbs. Barley, I'm using Quaker quick barley. Brown rice. Tomato sauce of your choice. Like I'm using ragu. I know a lot of people hate ragu, but that's at the end. It's nothing to worry about. My mom used to just use a can of tomato sauce, like Hunt's tomato sauce or something. And then for the vegetarian, we're going to use a can of black beans. We're also going to use some baby white kernel corn. This is, I believe, bird's eye frozen. A couple of onions. And then for the meat variety, we're going to have some ground meat, one egg, and these are the cage-free eggs. So these are the not cruelty animal eggs, even though we're using ground beef. So these are your basic ingredients, and I'm going to show you next how to get this cabbage. This is the thing that's going to be a little tricky. But other than that, we're going to get started, and we're going to make two varieties today. So if you're vegan, you'll be satisfied, and if you like meat, you'll also be satisfied. Okay, on to the cabbage. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how to get some of these leaves peeled off of the cabbage. Now my grandmother, when she used to make it, she would take the cabbage out and run it under cold water, but then, that stops the cooking process, and it really slows things down. So I try to kind of give it a peel while it's still in the, like that. Just sort of peel it off. Take this and flip it over. Like that. And just keep it in that hot water because you don't want to keep stopping and starting the cooking process. And see, that comes right off. Just kind of use this thing as a cutter, or use a knife even, you can. I'm going to throw it over my bowl. So, I'm going to peel off a few layers. Let me try to find another one. And that's how the best way where you're going to have the best cabbage. The thing is, especially if you're doing vegan, you do not want to rip it because you're not going to use an egg in the vegan alternative here. You're going to have have a nice tight wrap so the stuff doesn't fall out. So if you have rips and tears in your cabbage, then that's no good. With the meat, it's not so much because it's almost like a meatball inside the cabbage, and it kind of holds itself together with that egg. But the vegan kind, you're going to have to try to be so careful not to rip the cabbage. Okay. Also, here we go. There's another piece off. Also, with the vegan kind, I like mine still a little bit, because for the meat kind, you're gonna cook it a long time, 3 to 4 hours on a low heat, because you want to get that meat tender. But with the vegan kind, you don't cook it very long because it'll fall apart. So you only cook it the vegan kind maybe for 1 hour. So therefore, with the vegan kind, you may want your cabbage a little bit softer, a little bit more cooked to start with, because it's not going to be in the oven all that time. Whereas with the meat, you may want it a little bit, still with a little bit of a bite to it. As you can see that this one is this will definitely be a vegan one. It's really soft. So, I go down a few levels and then let it cook a while, and go down a few more levels and let it cook a while. This is tedious, and usually a lot of times I'll just make the cabbage the day ahead of time, but I didn't do that today. So there's another piece off, and then I just take this and really press down on it, like to kind of cut it. Or again, you could take a knife and actually cut it. So obviously the ones that I'm pulling off, they're softer, and then the inside is still very hard. That's why you have to go at it like this. Otherwise, you're going to have, some will be really soft and some will be really hard, and you don't want that. So pull it off another level. You just keep kind of doing it, until you can't do it anymore. It'll kind of let you know how many levels it's ready to be peeled off at the time that you're trying to do it. Get that cut off of there. Okay. Another one. That's a nice one. It's got a nice round curve to it. Really nice. Nice pocket to put your stuffing in, the filling, the meat filling. I'm going to do... It's probably better. I don't have actually a good pan for this. It's probably better if you have a pan where you can submerge the entire cabbage right in the water. And I don't have a good pan for this. So what I do is I roll, like, let it cook a while here, and then flip it and let it cook a little bit on the other side, which is another kind of tedious thing. So this, although this pan is wide enough, it's not tall enough to really submerge the whole cabbage in there. And I like to let that water boil down because we're going to use it, and it's rich in, it's got all the cabbage juice in there and everything. And cabbage is really good for you. I mean, I heard that it's more vitamin C than oranges or orange juice, and it's got a lot of other good qualities, nutritional value to it. It's good. It's a good thing to eat. And a lot of people, cabbage does kind of have like a a stinky smell, and people don't like it. My kids love it because they were raised eating it their whole life. But when you mix it with, that's one of the reasons you're going to mix it with all this other flavors. The cabbage is not that strong. It's really not that overbearing. That's what you want, ideally. You want to be able to taste everything. You don't want one flavor being overbearing and weighing out the others. It's a combination of a lot of different flavors. I got another good one out of there. Further, because I'm going to cut up big chunks of cabbage and set it down in the bottom of the thing. So I'm going to let that go for a little while longer. But what I want to start also is I've got a small pan here. And what I want to do, I've got a ladle and a small pan. I'm going to scoop out some of this cabbage juice into my smaller little pan here. That's 1, 2, I think I'm going to go 2.5, like 2.5 ladles into a smaller saucepan. And what I'm going to bring, take the other burner, which is not going to light because I spilled water on it. But anyways, I'll do that later. You take this, boil it, and then you're going to add barley and the rice, barley and rice, and cook to direction. I just actually throw a few handfuls of each. I put them right in the same pan in the cabbage juice. Cook them in the cabbage juice. Then that flavor absorbs into the rice and the barley, and it gives it a nice texture. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You can read the directions if you want to measure it out exactly. It does tell. Okay, so what I did is I switched burners so you can take a look at this. So I used 2.5 ladles. Ladles like this, I think they're pretty standard. It doesn't really matter that much because it's all here's one, 2. These grow too, by the way. I'm going to go 3 or 2.5. It's that much barley. And then I'm using brown rice. The key to brown rice is to really cook it. A lot of people don't like it, but it's not bad. The key is you have to cook it longer because it's kind of tough, So to get it to a nice soft consistency, you got to cook it longer. And I'm going to go ahead and do, whoops. That's more than a tablespoon. I'm not sure. It's a palmful. That's about, I don't know, another 2. So I'm going to do about equal parts. A little more brown rice in. Okay, now these are just going to cook. It's just going to cook for a while. It's going to boil, and then I'm just going to let it set. And all that cabbage juice is going to get in that rice and that barley, and it's going to be awesome. So we'll be back in a minute. Okay, I was coming back to this. This is a mixture of brown rice and barley. And I've been cooking it down, and when it's just about done, there's just a little bit of liquid left, then you can just set it aside and let it sit and the rest of that liquid absorb. I went ahead and measured it, and my palmful is roughly 1 tablespoon. So that was, like 2.5 ladles. I should measure this for you too, but I mean, I think ladles are pretty standard size. 2.5 ladles of cabbage liquid juice poured in there. And then I think, what did I do? I had like 3 tablespoons of barley and 3 tablespoons of brown rice. So you can't even see that it's brown. It's all mixed in there really good. And again, I'm just going to set it aside, let the rest of that liquid absorb, and let it cool down because it's still got some steam coming up. So we want it to be nice and cool when we go to mix it all together. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back with the beans here, and my black beans, this is actually half a can. We don't need a whole can. We need about a half a can of black beans. And we want to get rid of a lot of the liquid in the can and that slimy stuff because that just makes it more slimy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and kind of coarsely chop up these. You don't want to put them in the food processor because it just turns to a big glob of mush. So you want to have a little bit of texture. So I'm chopping up these black beans rather coarsely. Kind of want to simulate the texture of ground beef, but again, not too mushy. And what I do is you get rid of that slime and that mush, and the beans are going to be kind of dry. So what you're going to have to do later is add in some olive oil. And olive oil is closer because when you're cooking with the, when you do the regular meat, there's obviously juices from the beef that comes off of it. So the olive oil is added back in. That's going to kind of simulate the beef juices. It's going to give it. You need that little bit of oil. This the black stuff that comes in the can. I've tried it that way, and it just made it like a big giant mush, and you don't want that. So even if there's like a couple whole ones still left, no big deal. So I think that's about it. So it's been coarsely chopped, and it's got a nice consistency. And this is really what you're going to use for your faux ground meat. I mean, no surprises there. But adding the olive oil, that is the magic touch that really gives it a texture more like a meat would. I'm going to just grab those couple little extra ones. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to move this to a bowl and get the rest of the ingredients ready to prepare. Okay, and I'm back, and we're going to do 2 different versions, and we're going to make, this is for the stuffed part of the stuffed cabbage. So I did go ahead and get some measuring things out so people know what we're doing here. This is about 1 cup of meat, roughly. 1 cup of ground beef. And 2 ingredients, by the way, that I forgot to mention in the first part is this Parmesan cheese, or in this case, Parmesan Romano mix. That can, if you don't have it, you can leave it out. And then, of course, the olive oil for the vegan olive oil, but it could also be substituted with regular vegetable oil. So we're going to start, what we want to do is I've got about a medium onion, a little over a cup, half a can actually, of diced up black beans for the vegan. And we're going to use about equal parts, 1, 2, 3 equal. So onion, bean, and breadcrumbs. I usually eyeball it, but I went ahead and and these are plain. For this, you don't want Italian seasoning necessarily. I guess you could if that's what you think you might like it, but I'm going to use these measuring cups so I can give you a better idea. This one I'm using is 1/4 a cup, so there's 1/4, 2/4. I'm really just eyeballing it. 3/4, a little more. I guess that is about 1 cup. So we're going to say 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup. I think that's probably about right. It goes a lot farther because you're going to add these stuff here too. Now, stuffed cabbage in general is just like, there's so many variations on it. And a lot of probably the more traditional type has less ingredients. I always started adding more. I'm going to do the same thing over here to get the meat one going at the same time. I started adding different ingredients along the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. The way my mom made it basically the only ingredients that were in her stuffed cabbage with meat was breadcrumbs, onion, rice, and egg and meat. And that was it. I started adding these other things years later, like the barley and the brown rice, and then the corn. And I like the baby shoe peg corn. But I started adding these different ingredients later on, and just because I liked it. Some people, I've had it too, where it's just like mainly solid meat and with a little bit of rice in it. And I think, you know, I never was a big, I mean, I still eat meat somewhat, but, you know, I like to disguise it or mix it in. I never was like a big meat eater. I don't eat steak. I like chewing on a big giant piece of flesh is not appetizing. So what I've done here, I've kind of divided this in half, this barley and brown rice mixture, and I'm going to put that right in there, right in with the breadcrumbs. Half in this is going to be the vegan, and then half the rest of it in the meat. I'm going to put a little bit more in the vegan because, okay, and then we want to add our onion. I'm going to get that mixed in, and we're going to add the onion. This is about a medium to small onion. You're going to add up, you know, equal parts meat, breadcrumb, and onion. So if you want to make a ton of this, you would actually, you know, do more. This is probably more on the minimal side, like one onion, one cup. Okay. So right now we're neck and neck. Everything. Let's get rid of some of these dirty bowls and stuff. We don't want to add the meat or the beans till the very last thing. I'm also going to put in at this point. I'm going to add my a few shakes of the this case it's Parmesan Romano, but it can be just straight Parmesan, or if you leave it out, it's not that big of a deal either. I'm not even sure. I'm going to use separate forks too. Didn't I have another fork? We're going to use one fork for the meat side and one fork for the vegan side so that nothing gets mixed in. Okay, so I'm just kind of fluffing this in, getting that onion, breadcrumb, rice, and barley kind of all mixed in so it looks well distributed. So these are basically your dry ingredients. Now at this point, I'm going to put the egg in the meat version. And this again is the farm raised free-range chickens. So they had a nice life. There we go. And then I'm going to mix this together to get a nice consistency, a nice mixture. It actually looks like this is too much. So that's why I do this first, because if it's too much, you can take some out. Let's take a look. And then this one, since we don't have egg, what I'm going to do to add some liquid, I've got some of that, this is that cabbage juice. Again, I'm going to keep using that cabbage juice. This is the water that you boiled the cabbage in. So I got 1, 2, 3. I should use a 4 tablespoons. Let's use one of these. This is a 1/4 cup. That almost looks right. Well, but I used, yeah. So that's what's going to get this nice and moist because we're not using the egg. So just cabbage juice is your egg substitute. And then I'm going to put a little bit of that also in the egg one because I like that. You want to get that cabbage juice really in there. Okay. So in both cases, it looks like I overdid it. Yeah, because now it's not equal. It's not equal at all. All right, so we still have these bowls. I'm going to backtrack a little, and I'm going to scoop out some of this. So I want it to be equal amounts. It's still much more of the stuffing stuff, so I went way overboard on this. It's closer. Okay, that's pretty close. Maybe not even, but this is your ratio. So this much bean or meat to this much stuffing, that's about the ratio. And we're going to get rid of a lot of this too because we only have this much meat. That's way too much. So I know you probably don't want to backtrack. I'm going to say, I'm going to take a look at this and see where we're at. That's about right. So this is how much I've taken out. So I would go, you know, half then, maybe half cup of all three of those. Half cup onion, half cup, little better than a half cup, overflowing half cup, say, of each of those ingredients in both cases. Overflowing half cup of breadcrumbs, overflowing half cup of onion, and an overflowing half cup of the barley and rice. Okay, so now we're going to add the bean in there to this. Is a Oh, I forgot about the corn. Well, we'll put it in now. That's okay. So I'm going to measure so we know exactly how much corn we're putting in. So that's 1/4 of a cup. Tiny bit more. So I'm going to say 3/8. 3/8 cup of corn, which is 1.5 of these 1/4 container deals here. Okay. And then just start with your fork, mixing that all together. Now this, I've arrived at this recipe. I mean, this took some time. I mean, the very first time I made it, my daughters wanted me to try. They have those faux ground beef crumbles that you can buy. It's soy-based. And that tasted horrific. That was gross. It ruined the whole batch of the stuffed cabbage. Whatever that flavoring, it smells exactly like those beef-basted dog bones, you know. And I really don't want to eat crunched up dog bones in my stuffed cabbage, and that's what it seemed like. And then my daughters go, I'm like, oh, this is horrible and everything. This is unedible. I felt it was like unedible. And my daughters are like, well, Mom, it's vegan. It's supposed to taste bad. And I'm like, what? That is unacceptable. It's vegan, so it's supposed to taste bad? No, unacceptable. So then I set out on a mission. I was on a mission to figure out a good recipe for this alternative stuffed cabbage that wasn't going to taste like dog bones. Okay. And this is what I finally came up with. Now, the beans, you know, that's no brainer. That's no big discovery. A lot of people use black beans instead of meat. But the first few times I tried it with a variety of beans, and then we settled on just the black beans. But it was too dry, and it wasn't a matter of adding the more liquid. It was because the meat releases juices and oil. So that's where this comes in. And you add this last. You're going to have to add some oil, some olive oil. I'm using olive oil. I suppose, again, you could use, you know, vegetable oil, or I don't really think that the type of oil matters that much. But I want to give it a good glisten. I want to have it where you can see it sort of glistening, that it's got some oil in there. So that wasn't quite enough. I'm going to try it, see. I should have measured it. So I did. This isn't a real tablespoon, but let's just see. I'm going to say that's the first amount that I added was about a tablespoon. This is another tablespoon. And it's got to have a little bit of a glisten and shine on it. And then you know that you've got enough. I think that's going to about do it. As you can, I don't know if you can see, but in the light, there's a little bit of a shine. And that's going to give you some moisture. I'm going to go one more. And this is just this isn't a measuring spoon. Obviously, it's a tablespoon from a, silverware. Yeah, that'll do it. So 3 tablespoons of olive oil or cooking oil. And, this one seems like it's good to go. That's about the perfect blend here. So this will be my, there, nice, beautiful. Okay, now we're going to move over to our meat one. And in here I've added breadcrumbs, onion, barley rice mixture, Parmesan Romano cheese, one egg, and I just added the corn. Now this is a little too dry also, but in this case what I'm going to add for moisture is I'm going to put in more of this cabbage juice, because that just gives it such a good flavor. And the cabbage is really healthy, really good for you. Okay, that's good. So then I'm going to add my 1 cup of ground beef. I I buy a big pack of this and then break them down into smaller and freeze. Yeah, that's a good ratio. And I like to just, I don't know why, I don't know if I like it, but it seems to work better if you just get your hands in there and squeeze at it. Squeeze it together. See, like I have a lot of stuff in there, and meat is a little bit of what the stuff is. As I said, some people, it's pretty much just meat with a little rice in there, but I really like a lot of different things in there, a lot of different flavors. And this is how I've been making it for years. The vegan thing is just a new thing that I've developed over the last few years because of my daughters going that way. And it's admirable. And I try to cut back on the meat, but I'm not all the way off the meat. So here's what this is what your meat one looks like, finished. And this is what your vegan one looks like, finished. Okay, so I'm going to get the cabbage over here, and we're going to move on to the next step of making the actual cabbage rolls. Okay, and we're back. Now I've got, what I've done is I've got 2 separate pans. I've poured a little sauce in the bottom. Again, I'm using ragu. I know a lot of people have a problem with ragu, and if you do, then use a different sauce. It's not about the sauce, it's about everything else. You homemade, or like I said, my mom used to just use a can of like Hunt's tomato sauce. I've got a lot of good peel-off pocket things to work with here. I'm going to set that aside for a minute. Put it over here. I've been, the rest of the cabbage head here, I've let cool in a colander in a bowl. And I'm going to give this, chop it up. I'm going to cut that bottom piece off. Well, let's move this bowl out of the way, make sure you can see. So I'm going to get rid of that. Oh, I chopped at the wrong spot. I was trying to get rid of that core thing. So let's get rid of that core thing. There. Follow it down. Because that's not very tasty. But there's still a lot of good cabbage left here. So I meant to, you got a core, get the center core thing out of there. There we go. That one's got a big chunk of the core in it too. Actually, you don't have to use every little bit of the cabbage. But these nice chunky pieces, they've still got a lot of juice and flavor in them. So I kind of roughly chop these up into some chunks. There's a piece of that core we don't want. So give it a rough chop in some nice chunks. And then, before I start making the rolls or the stuffed cabbages, we're going to put some of these chunks along the bottom of the pan too. And we're going to cook down and get coated in all the flavors, and it's going to be awesome too. Okay. So we don't waste anything. Very little waste as possible. Okay. So I'll start with the vegan ones. Now the vegan ones, you want to use your thinnest or most, I guess, floppiest, because some still have some thickness to them. I'm going to get these all out of here. And some are on the thinner side. For the vegan ones, you want to use the ones that are on the thinner side, because for this reason, here's a nice thin one, you are not going to cook the vegan ones as long because they tend to just fall apart. Because there's no egg in there, and the meat, you have to cook the other ones, the meat ones, longer because it takes a long time for that meat to become, tender. So I'm going to find me the thinner leaves. I'm going to kind of try to separate the thinner and the thicker. And these are like the thinner ones. Now, you can cut that big piece of stem, that one. This was like the very outer piece. Okay, so I got my spoon. Get a nice spoonful of stuffing. I better do it where you can see. Here, I'll put it like that. Okay. Nice, maybe 2 spoonfuls of stuffing. And then turn it kind of this way. Okay, so I've got a nice big stuff of the batter right in the cabbage leaf. And then just give it a roll. And then I tuck them under too. So there. And then lay it in the pan with the tucks underneath. And then just keep going. See, sometimes this piece of stem, this one, again, I want to get rid of that piece of stem. It's a little tough. But you want to pick also for the vegan ones, nice solid ones that don't have any rips in them, because this stuff, you know, it'll leak out because it's not held together with egg. And once it starts cooking, it kind of loosens up. Okay, so there. And this one I'm going to try rolling from the thin side. I think that might be a better option, yeah. Roll it from the thin side, tuck it under, in the pan it goes. Another one, I'm going to cut the stem out. I should have went through and cut all these stems out ahead of time, but there we go. It's a nice, it's got a lot of cabbage room in it. Good scoopful, maybe a little more, like 1.5 these kind of tablespoons seems to be working out pretty good. I'm going to roll from the thin side every time. So in the thin side, roll. Maybe I'll tuck and roll this time. Tuck and roll. Okay, like that. Just so that it's not going to fall out. I mean, you don't have to be, you can really roll them any way you feel like it. So this one doesn't have that tough stem, so I can just skip that step and get right to the rolling. Roll in, roll in, roll in. Okay, here we go. In there. Again, it's not going to be perfect every time, but just so that there's no way for the stuff to escape is what we're after, really. We want to keep it all tucked in there. It's a nice one. On the meat ones, you don't have to worry as much because it's almost like it's a little meatball inside of there. It'll hold together. Matter of fact, you have to cook it a really long time to get it nice and tender. So not as fussy. I'm just going to make one more big one out of this. And we're going to cook it along. These are only going to cook for an hour, the vegan ones. So if you're only making vegan, 1 hour. 350 for an hour. That's good enough. Okay, so I'm just going to get it all tucked in and rolled up. And in it goes. So those are ready. They're going to need sauce, but I'm going to move over and finish up, do these meat ones first, and then we'll divide the sauce up. Where's my bowl of meat stuff? There it is. Meat stuff. Okay, enough with the meat stuff jokes. So same thing. Take the core out. Get a nice good spoonful. And with these, I kind of make them into little meatballs right off the bat. Just find a place to tuck it. Just find a way to get it all in there. There, in the pan it goes. I'll pull my rolling things out here, and there we go. Do my work this way. Another scoop. Same thing. I'm also cooking in the thing, roll. See, that one didn't. See, if that happens, I might take another like small piece that's broke. Here, there's a good one. So this is not really quite enough, then I'll just take another small piece and just like double roll it like that. I forgot what I was talking about. Let's just continue on with making the stuffed cabbage, or cabbage rolls, they've been called. Get that in there and in the pan. I might be short a little on these things, so I'm going to start making them kind of bigger. And if some people don't like cabbage, I mean, my brother never liked cabbage, so my mom would make him on the side just these meatballs just cooked in sauce. But, they would still get the cabbage juice in there. And again, it's so healthy. Oh, that's a perfect, nice one. Okay, there's my last one, too. There you go. These also freeze. Like, I'm a little rusty because I don't make them very often. I might make these once a year, and then I freeze them, and they come back perfect. They come back, you can warm them they come back good in the microwave, too, out of the freezer. Or just cook them in a 300-degree oven on like a lower heat, for an hour, 300 to 350 for 1 hour out of the freezer, and they come back perfect. So I usually make a big batch of these, like once a year, and freeze them, and then you have them. So you could throw these pieces in, but I think we're cool on the cabbage. I think we're all good on that, so that's going into the compost thing there. Okay, so here we go. Vegan meat. Last step is to pour the sauce, and of course, your sauce of choice. You do not have to use ragu. And of course, I've used the no meat vegetarian, no not the ragu with the meat in it. And then what I'm going to do, the cabbage juice. I'm going to put this cabbage juice in there. I don't have the lid. Normally I would have the lid and really give it a good, close the lid and really shake it up. And I'm going to add that in there for the last step. This you want to put more water in because it's going to cook longer, and that sauce is all going to start, getting really thick and evaporating. So this is it. I'm going to cook this. This is going in at a low heat, about a 300-degree oven, for 3 to 4 hours. Just slow cook it, and then it's all going to, all those meat juices and all those flavors are going to come together. This, not as much. Actually, I'm going to try to scoop some of this water off camera and get it in there because I probably shouldn't have added that much liquid in that one. So probably you don't even need to add any liquid. I'm going a little crazy with that cabbage juice. But it's chock full of vitamins and good stuff. Okay, so 300 for 3 to 4 hours. Keep checking it. And then put this in, if you want it to come out at the same time, this comes in at around the last hour. And they're going to come out beautiful, and we're going to show you the finished product when we're done with it. Okay, now both stuffed cabbages are done. They were baked covered in the oven. This is the vegan, and the vegan was only in for the last hour, so the stuff inside doesn't fall apart. And this is the meat one. Now this cooked for 3 hours, and they're both going to be marvelous and delicious. And then also at the end of this video, we're going to put up both recipes for the meat and the vegan versions of the awesome stuffed cabbage. Enjoy!